is suggesting that one of the very first orders of business for a new Biden White House will be to kill the Keystone XL pipeline. It has served as a bit of a wake-up call to the Canadian business community. Goldy Hyder is CEO of the Business Council of Canada. Goldy, great to have you with us. And I want to start with this news. I mean, it is hard to see anybody acting surprised by this. This goes all the way back to when he was vice president. We understand the opposition. But what do you think is the right response from your point of view, from Canada's side? What should we do?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think we need to see what the actual announcement is. As you noted, these are sources and speculation. We have to see if there's an opening, Amanda, and if there isn't one, we need to create one, because this whole transition that we're undertaking here, this project was rejected by the administration that now soon-to-be President Biden was a part of with President Obama. But a lot has happened to this project since then. A lot has happened in the sector since then. So if the left, so-called left, is serious about the transition, about the investments that are necessary in innovation to bring about, cleaner fuels and cleaner energy, then recognize the effort that this company, TC Energy, has made to address the issues of climate. By 2030, they're saying net zero, not 2050 that most people talk about for the planet. 2030 for this project. Renewables are going to be a big part of this project. Indigenous equity is a key component of this project. The unions and the jobs that are attached to this on both sides of the border are all there. So you have to give some credit to listening to what was said back in 2015 and now saying we got it right. So I'm concerned that it seems to be that some projects, doesn't matter what you do. And that's a very chilling effect on investment around North America, if that's the case.
It's a chilling effect, but the chill has already set in, if I can put it that way. I mean, we kind of live in a new world. We've seen the change in investment plans and outlook of the major players. We see what is happening. It's no longer personal to the oil sands, right? It is just something that the world is rethinking. Goldy, do we spend too much time and attention as a nation on this one sector? Or is it time for us to say, look, America's energy independent now. No kidding. They don't need Keystone. Let's move on. Let's go to a plan B.
Yeah, I think it's an important point, which is you say, we just dependent on the one sector. I think the concern is we were dependent on one country. We were effectively reliant on the United States to be our best friend, our ally, our key economic partner, and all of those things. But, if we've learned anything over the last 4 years is, that's over. And what this announcement is, if it's going to go the way it sounds like it's going to suggest, is America's looking after America. So it's high time that Canada looks after Canada. And that means really diversifying. It means having the trade-enabling infrastructure to get to the Asian markets. One of the things we're seeing about the consequence of COVID is, go east, young man or young woman, because that's where the action is. There's only a few countries that are even growing right now, and they're out in Asia. So we've got to have access to those markets. We can't be relying just on the United States. And that means attracting investment. And this is where I have the greatest concern with all of us who believe in the need for this transition, who all recognize the importance of ensuring that we have a planet for our kids and our grandkids. It's a transition. There isn't an on and an off switch. You actually have to work at this. You got to do it over the long haul. And companies and investors and businesses and employees and stakeholders are all on board. Give us the opportunity and the time to do this, to show that Canadian energy sector is far more responsible, far more able to do the innovation that's necessary. But if you suffocate the capital, you run the risk that you're counting on a bunch of other oil-producing countries to do things that are not there. Do we need to diversify our economy? Of course. But in the short run, Amanda, without the energy sector's recovery, it's going to really hold back the recovery for the Canadian economy.
It's easy, though, to see the argument, Goldy, from those who see us, the U.S., one of the other things we expect a new President Biden to do is rejoin Paris, get more serious on climate. It's very easy to see the argument that massive multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects that are tied to fossil fuels don't make sense. I'm not advocating that, but you can see the logic of it, that if we're looking to the future, let's look to the future with our dollars and invest in things that will be worthwhile and with us in 100 years. From the point of view of the Business Council, this comes a little bit around to not just what we want from America, but what we want from Ottawa. They're pondering investments up to 3.5% of GDP. It is material stuff, as you know. If they get it right, it could be a big deal. What do you want to see, given those two realities, that we do have to move beyond the fossil fuel carbon-based reality?
Well, to your first point, it's not either or, it's and there's a runway for this, and it's at least 30, 40, 50 years. Those are just the facts. People can deny them all they like, but the same people who don't want these pipelines are the same ones going to the gas station to get gas in their cars. Some cases, they're SUVs. So it's hypocritical, and we've got to call it out for when we see it. On the question of the broader goal for the federal government here is, we believe we need to be focused on growth. We need to be focused on productivity, enhancing investments. So childcare comes to mind, removing interprovincial trade barriers, building trade-enabling infrastructure, developing our ports, investing in our universities and our colleges and our polytechniques in partnership with business, who needs to do its part of investing in R&D, in innovation, in equipment, in machinery, in skills, labor productivity. We're in this together, as the saying goes. Well, then let's act like it as well. We cannot be coming at this from government's going to spend money and run deficits and debt, and businesses just going to do whatever it does. That's not the best way to build an economy. And I think that in some ways, if there is a silver lining to this unfortunate news, it truly is, as you said in your intro, a real wake-up call to Canada. What are you going to do to build an economy that's going to be able to afford the quality of life that we have, that's going to allow for growth, that's going to bring about prosperity, that's going to attract capital and people? And yes, a part of that is natural resources, but the other is where the puck is going again, right? It's about the intangible economy and investing in our human resources. That requires a strategy. It requires partnership, collaboration, and cooperation. We've been extending our hand for a long time on this, but we cannot be just sitting back watching governments spend into deficit and debt. These investments can be made in the best interests of all Canadians, in my mind.
Meanwhile, Goldy, I think most in the business community would agree that if there's a single job at hand for government, it's to help move beyond the pandemic. Vaccines is the key job right now. We're not doing well. You can put as rosy a picture as you want on this, but compared to G7 nations, we are behind the eight ball. We're getting less vaccine supply than other nations. We look a bit like patsies when it comes to how we've managed our sourcing. What would you say to Ottawa about what they need to do on the vaccine front?
Get as much as you can, as fast as you can. And I think, they're trying to do that. We have to be mindful, Amanda, and believe me, I'm no apologist for any government, but there are 9 billion people or 8 billion people, or whatever the number is out there. Everyone's going to want to get their vaccines in these countries. People are over procuring to secure the supply. I personally feel that we're going to get this done in 2021. It might be August, it might be September, it might be October, but Canadians should be reassured that they're going to be able to get their vaccines. I feel fairly confident about that. What I also want to see, though, is something we've been calling on for the entire 10 months, which is we've got to up our game in testing and tracking and tracing. We cannot believe that the vaccine is a cure in and of itself. It isn't. We still need to ensure that we have proper testing and tracking going on. We're getting better as each month passes, but frankly, we're well behind our own identified targets. We need to procure rapid tests as well, because I think testing is going to become common practice for a lot of things in the short to midterm, and we better make sure we have our handle on it, because this administration coming in down south has a very different response to COVID and is probably going to start scooping those up. So we need to get ahead in line on that stuff on the testing front as well.
We did talk to the Minister of Industry, Science and Innovation earlier. He said he referenced this idea that we will produce here, that there's some opportunity to actually make the vaccine. We don't have a ton of time here, Goldy, but does that send a chill down your spine? I mean, folks are already manufacturing it. We need to buy it. Is turning our attention to trying to make it ourselves the right thing to do? You got 30 seconds.
The message to governments is when businesses say, if you make these regulatory changes, this will be the consequence. It will create capital flight, movement of investment into other places where we can build. That's the consequence of decisions made years ago in the Health Canada that drove this investment away, and therefore vaccines aren't being produced in Canada. So let's make sure we don't make those mistakes again as we go forward.
Goldy Hyder, it is always good to have your thoughts. Appreciate your time today. Goldy Hyder is CEO of the Business Council of Canada.